Hello and welcome back to this part 3 in the Nadex Pro Series where we're going to be focusing on Nadex charts. It's good to see you again. If this is the first time joining us in this series, where were you? Seriously though, if this is your first time joining us, this by the way is one of my favorite modules. Definitely stick around and join, but if you haven't seen sessions 1 and 2 and you're not quite familiar with the platform and not quite familiar with the products, definitely go back and revisit those. In this session, we're really going to focus on the charts and some of the tools that you can use. Hopefully, make you a bit better trader. As I said, this is my favorite portion of the series, just because as a technician by trade, I really love charts and I found it a lifetime study. Before we get into the specifics, quick risk disclosure. Trading on Nadex involves financial risk and is not suitable for everybody. Trading is not easy. You need to understand your risk. I think that's one of the things I love about Nadex, actually, though, is that the risk can be defined. There's no nasty surprises, no margin calls. And in my history, I've seen some definite market shocks over the years. It still involves risk, though. So understand that. Know your risk. Have a trading plan, right? It doesn't matter if you're trading it on the stock index futures, economic events, commodities. Trading can be volatile. I mean, you can lose your the investment you put up on any trade. So just be aware of that and understand the risk, and then always define that risk and make sure it's part of your trading plan. That it's risk you can take on that is actually risk capital. So important. One other note, the content contained in this webinar is wholly owned, copyright owned by the North American Derivatives Exchange, or Nadex. So please don't record, reproduce, distribute, or broadcast any part of the webinar. That's strictly prohibited. And, also, as I mentioned before, not very cool. So with that, let's get into something about the Nadex charts. And this is what we're going to cover today. Then we'll hop into the platform. So we're going to take a look at the different chart types available. Understanding each chart type. The toolbar choices. This is going to be really important, including indicators and drawings. Using technical analysis and determining which contract to use. I do want to say, we'll be looking at some technical analysis. Nothing I say here today should be construed as an offer to buy or sell any contract. I'm going to be doing quick analysis. Throughout this, I do want to share with you some of the things that I've learned in my 20 plus years of doing this. I started looking at technicals, it would have been around 2001, 2002. The thing I love about them is they are a lifetime study, and there's a few things that I've learned from others, and particularly from mistakes I've made myself. And then we'll take a look at placing an order and closing a position from the charts. So with that, let's hop into the platform. Okay, so we've got our platform up. In this case, I've selected the Euro USD pair. Now, if you're trading a binary option, one of the easy charts, and you'll see it right here, if you hover over the mouse, it'll say binary ladder chart. Simply click on that and it opens up my binary ladder chart. I can see my strike prices on the side. That's why it's called, you guessed it, a binary ladder chart. It has the binary chain or the binary ladder along the right-hand side. And we'll come back to this chart in just a moment. Now, as you know from the second module, we do have different contract types, so you may want to be using different charts. And you can always open for the contract that you're in. You can always use, for example, if I was in a call spread, this would be a regular indicative underlying chart. A lot of people overlook the drop-down menu here. There's a couple key things that I just want to share. So I'm going to click there. I can open up an order ticket for this contract. Most people just click on the line though, but that is an option. I can also do a tear-off ticket, which if you're not familiar with that, if you're using multiple monitors and want to have multiple tickets open, you can actually do a tear-off ticket, which will reside outside the platform. Can be very handy, particularly if you're using multiple monitors. So I'm just going to click on the quick chart. Now this might look kind of funky, right? The quick chart is basically the price of the binary option, right? This binary hasn't moved a lot, very choppy. Now, it also hasn't been open that long. As it's open longer, I can basically see though here at a high level of 7, and it's gone down to about 2. Let's see if I can find another one here that maybe gives us a little bit better example. So quick chart, open that up. Yep. You can see these are very choppy. Now, as time goes by and as these fill up, they get a little bit smoother. But ones that start at a high level and stay at a high level, we don't really see. Right, so here's a better example. This is one that's a little bit smoother. It's more at the money. We can see, instead of the binary being at the top, the track of the binary option, right? So if I wanted to go back at any time, and this is actually great for kind of learning lessons, I guess. So for example, say if we bought this contract back here at 65, and want to say, okay, wow, maybe we should have got out over here. What did the binary app actually do? Very helpful when learning how binary option prices look. You can actually go back and compare that with the underlying market to see what that is. So again, this is the Euro USD greater than 110.40. This simply gives the pricing, and you can see the scale here. I'm going to zoom it in, of 0 to 100, the two boundaries of a binary option. And so that is the quick chart. It is basically the price path of the binary option. One other chart type here that I'll cover real quick is simply called the Nadex Settlement Index chart. Now, I will say, if you ever question a settlement, because charts are charts and there's differences in the data, the official settlement and the time and sales can be acquired through our customer service department. I'll throw up their contact and a little bit of information. But this is basically our Nadex indicative chart of the underlying market. This is basically our settlement calculation run every second to reproduce basically the path of the underlying market as an indication of where the market was. Again, don't use it for settlement calculations. Always, if you have any question on the settlement calculation, aren't sure about it, contact customer service. We can walk you through it and make sure that you're fully aware of it. But again, this is the indicative underlying, right? And so you have a few different chart types here, and what each chart type is then, right? So we had, in this case, the binary option chart, which is the ladders with the indicative underlying displayed behind it. We had the quick chart, which is the path of the binary option or the other instrument. So if you're using like a call spread, say, and also the settlement index, which is basically a blank version of the binary ladder chart. So let's spend a little bit of time and go over the charts. I'm going to open up the binary ladder chart because I want to show you some different choices that you have and really kind of walk through the charts because they're a very helpful tool. So as far as basic navigation, you can left click on the right bar and scroll up or down, right? To get a little bit different perspective, or to show more strike prices or fewer strike prices. This is particularly important depending on the time frame you're trading on. If you're trading on a 5-minute, you've only got about 5 strikes out there. You may want to zoom in a little bit more, get a really granular view. Whereas if you're trading something more like a weekly, you might want to zoom out and get a little bit longer perspective on the market, right? Down at the bottom, if I left click, and again, this is our binary ladder chart. I left click, this will open up my toolbar. I'm going to do that again. Pay attention to the bottom of my chart, right? Right here, it has basically the time frame, right? And I can scroll. I'm just using my mouse right now to scroll. And so we can see, okay, and this again is helpful, right? I can resize, reshape from the bottom. So if I'm looking for more time, less time, I'll show you how to change the intervals in just a moment. So let's go back to the toolbar. So all I'm going to do is left click on the chart. So again, pay attention to the bottom of the chart down here where we see the time frame. Left click once, it's going to open up my toolbar. Here's where I can select my interval. Now, as I mentioned throughout this, I want to hopefully share with you some of the things I've learned from a lot of traders I've known, as well as just from my own experience. And the first of those is really when you're looking at a time frame. Oftentimes people get stuck in one time frame, right? They're like, oh, I trade 5-minute binaries. I'm going to use a 1-minute chart. Maybe you're a little bit longer time frame. Maybe you're trading daily binary options, and you want to use a 15-minute chart. A good friend of mine has a saying. He's like, if the market does something that surprises me, it's typically because I haven't looked far enough left. So one of the things I'd encourage everybody to look into is what I call multiple time frame trading, right? So if I'm typically trading off the 5-minute chart, right, I have a very close-up view. The old saying, can't see the forest for the trees, kind of comes to mind here, right? And so if I'm looking at this, I get a small perspective on what this market's done. If I zoom out a little bit more, I get more of a history, right? I can see more data. If I'm trading a daily binary option, I might want to go back a little time. In the theory of technical analysis, typically the longer the time frame, if you're looking at support and resistance, the more solid it can be. Now, there's no guarantees, but when you have key levels lining up, for instance, when I was spending a lot of time trading just the underlying currency markets, particularly 2005, 6 through 2012, even though I was trading very short term, my typical trade was like an hour and a half or so. At the beginning of each week, I'd go out and I'd look at a daily chart, just because I wanted to see if there was any big levels that I might be missing. So I wanted to see a lot of data. I didn't look at it every day, but I could note those key levels. Also, if I was drawing a trend line, and so let's say, for example, and your trend lines will stay up on your chart. So for example, let me just go out to the 2-hour. I'm just going to do something like this and scroll. If I want to draw a trend line, right, I've changed my interval from the 15-minute to the 2-hour. Give me a little bit longer scope. I'm now going to go to my drawing toolbar. So there are going to be a lot of different tools here. I encourage you to explore. I'm not going to cover every one of them because it would really, a lot of these, particularly like the fib retracement and fib extension, could be their entire own module. So I'm just going to focus on a couple of key things here, but I definitely encourage you to explore them and learn them. So right now, I'm just going to look at a trend line. So I'm just going to go select trend. Keep this in mind on trend lines. Always draw them from right to left, right? Always draw them from right to left. So if I was drawing this trend line, right, and we want to have 3 points, and don't be like, oh, hey, this is a point, and don't try to make it fit. If it's not there, it's not there, right? The market will determine if it's there. So this is basically the rough trend line, right? You can see that since basically early August, we've been kind of trending down there. And so now I have a trend line that will go out into the future. So as the market moves, right, I'll continue to look at this as potential key areas of resistance. So for example, if the market drops, comes back up, makes contact, that might be a place where I look to sell, right? So key point on trend lines. It does make a difference. Some people would say, oh, it doesn't make any difference at all, but I've seen specific examples where it does. I don't know, maybe it's a trick our eyes play on us, but I'll call that another pro tip. Always draw your trend lines right to left. When looking at multi-time frame analysis or any analysis, you may want to use multiple time frames because now I have a trend line that's based on the 2-hour. It might not be relevant for me today, but maybe, maybe I did this trend line on Monday and now it's Thursday. And if I hadn't done that, I would think, okay, wow, we're really going to climb. I think the market's really going to go up. If I didn't have that line there, I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't have that in my head. And so to me, that's really one of the importance, because if you do that at the beginning of the week and look at the longer time frame, it can really help you on key levels of support and resistance you might otherwise miss on a much shorter time frame. Now, with my trend line, I have that highlighted. And so with all the drawing tools, I can duplicate it as well. And then, so for example, if I wanted to create my own channel, right? Maybe I'm creating my own channel, something like that. This is something I don't use that much as far as the channel. I just want to point that out only because unless the channel has clear levels of support down here and we have clear levels of resistance, it's great if the market is in a channel. However, if you see that it doesn't fit, it's kind of a worthless line. It would just be misleading. So I'm going to select this line, and all I have to do is then click delete, right? We just wanted to show you the duplicate function. So I'm going to go back, and just to reiterate, I'm going to hit interval now, and I'm going to go back to a 15-minute chart. So again, if I want to find my drawing tools, that was the trend line. If I wanted to find, basically, I just want to find, a vertical line. Maybe I want to set like something out on my chart as far as vertical line from a time frame. A horizontal line, I can simply click and drag, and maybe I can see this here. Just going to move that slightly. Maybe I'm looking at that as support down here where we saw those lows right around 110, 200. Now, all of these are customizable as well. So when I select the line, right, you see one is a blue dashed line, one is a green solid line. If I want to edit that line, I can simply edit the line. I can actually change the level slightly, really hone it in. I can also change the color. So maybe I want that to be more like a blue color. Click Save. Maybe I want it to be a bit thicker or thinner or dashed, whatever the case may be. I click Apply and boom. And so maybe I color code these. I see that they're both dashed and they're both kind of that bluish color. Maybe that tells me, hey, I did that on my 2-hour chart. That's where those levels are coming in from. If I'm not sure what they are, I can always just zoom back out to the 2-hour time frame, right? So we'll go to there, and I'm going to go even a little bit shorter now into the 5 minutes, right? So now we've got a little bit more granular view of the market. And so again, all the drawings are customizable as far as color and type, texture. Let's look at types of charts real quick before we get into the indicators, because this is a real quick one. We're going to spend a bit of time on the indicators. I've got my candlestick. I've got my line chart. High, low, open, close are also known as a bar chart, right? And mountain. It's really your preference. I know a lot of people are big into candlestick analysis. I think it's a great study. I really like candlesticks personally. They give me a lot of information, and so that's been my default chart for a while. Now, though, if I want to customize this, right, I have red and green for up and down, excuse me, down and up in that order. If I want to customize this, I can change, maybe I want to do a blue upper body and a blue wick. I'll just go in again, fully customizable to colors, and I'm going to click done. Well, that's kind of bright. Maybe around the 4th of July, that'd be nice. So let's see here. So again, if I look at it, I'm not very happy with it. I go back to customize. I'm going to say, you know what? I like the standard regular old green and regular old green for rising. I just choose on my color palette, click save, click done, right? Very customizable. I can also save layouts, right? So if this is a layout that I like, maybe I've got a bunch of different indicators, and we'll take a look at this again after we apply some indicators. I can save various layouts, right? We're going to talk about the indicators in a minute. It's really, because we're going to spend the most time on that, I want to show a few of the other features first. The other important one is this show function, right? So I want to make sure probably that I'm showing my open positions, and we'll look at that when we place an order from it in working orders. My indicators I definitely want to show, but I'll show a quick way in a little bit on how to clean up the chart. Because a lot of times the best indicator is price itself. That's another thing. I know, particularly if you're newer to trading, you study all different types of indicators, which we'll take a look at. Most of those really try to work and hone in on specific indicators, which we'll talk about as far as the types of indicators. But you want to show those, but sometimes price, and often price is the most important action. The indicators just help us with that. And if I'm drawing something, for example, I can just click that, though, if I want to clean up my chart, and I click drawings. I'll do that again. So if I click off drawings, right, they disappear. Can be handy if you want to get a clean chart. Here's another one. Some people really like the high-low open close data. And basically what this is, if you see that flag appear, it'll tell you for that candle what that information is, high-low open close. All right, I'm going to get rid of the high-low open close data because I want to take a look at the charts. There's also a last trade here. I actually don't change that, the last traded. Some people will do it by the bid price or ask price. I think that gets a little bit confusing. If you want to dive deeper into that, try it out. I'm going to suggest you try that out on your own because we could actually get into my personal feelings about those, but I have mine set to default of the last traded. So let's get into indicators, right? We'll place a few indicators here on this chart. And one thing I want to point out, because I've seen this way too many times, before you use any indicator, you need to know what type of indicator it is. And what I mean by type is it a trend indicator? Is it a volatility? Is it a momentum indicator? Right? Because there are different types of indicators. And let's say, for example, you're using 4 different indicators. and they're all momentum indicators. And all of them are saying exactly the same thing, and they probably will unless you've really tweaked their settings. They'll probably be pretty close if they're all set to the default setting, and they're all momentum indicators. They're all going to say the same thing. So you want to use different types of indicators when you're doing your analysis, right? Otherwise, you get a lot of false positives in that respect. And so always understand the type of indicator that you're using, right? And so let's go in here and select a couple of indicators. I'm going to go to, actually, this is a very popular one, the MACD, right? This is the MACD, moving average, convergence, divergence, right? So I've got my MACD there. I'm going to click off my chart. By the way, when I left-clicked on the chart, you see my list of indicators went away. That cleaned up the chart, right? I have my MACD at the bottom. If I want to maybe lower that, I simply click and drag there. Now, the MACD default setting, basically in a MACD, you have the moving average, right? And we see those lines right here. And let me bring up the settings. If I want to change the settings here or customize this, I go to this box here and I simply click on the box, right? And so the MACD is made up of the exponential moving averages, a fast and a slow. So the fast in the default is set to 12, slow is set to 26, and basically that's the period of the chart. So so if I have a 12, that's the last 12 candles. More weight in the calculation because it's exponential, more weight is given to the more recent candles, right? And that's the exponential moving average. You can also do simple moving average, which is basically just a simple average of all of the candles, open, high, low, close. You can change the colors of your histogram, right? So if I wanted that to be a different color, same thing as when we did the chart types. I can also change how the lines look, very customizable. The biggest things in the indicators is they're customizable from the period. Some people will use different settings. They might want a fast EMA of 5 and a slow EM of 26. Do your own research on that. I just want to show you where that functionality resides, right? And so that's the MACD. Now, if I want to get rid of an indicator, right here on this flag, simply click X, right? All right, so if I want to go back to my indicators, I simply left-click on the chart. Indicators was previously selected. Now maybe I want to put up a couple of my own moving averages, right? There are 3 moving averages that pop up, and this is a regular moving average. Again, I'm going to left-click on the chart, and what I'm going to do is go into the moving averages. See, there are 3. I can put a ton of moving averages on here. You can see all of those boxes. Right now I have a 20, a 50, and a 100. If I want to add a 200, a lot of people, particularly in longer term, you don't see it so much in 5-minute binary option, but in longer term, particularly investing, a lot of people use a 200-day moving average. If I'm happy with that color, I simply hit apply, right? And now I've got my 200-day, which is a very slow moving average. Maybe I want to simplify it though. Maybe I only want to use 2 moving averages, or maybe I want to even just take a look at what it looks like with 2. So I'll keep the 20 and the 50. Those boxes are checked. And now I have my 2 moving averages on the chart. Pretty easy stuff. Again, I can click on this box, customize the thickness, how thin it is. If I've got a bunch of stuff up, I might want a little thinner. If it's a key indicator of mine, and maybe it's a little bit thicker. And I simply set those and click apply. I'm going to go down and on the left-hand side, I'm just going to scroll. And here's another one, the RSI, which is momentum indicator, also called relative strength index. Again, I've got my list up there. I'm going to click left. And now I've got my RSI on the bottom. The RSI, again, customizable. Right, the default here we have 70 and 30, but we can change all of our colors in the fill if we have any. Click apply. The RSI is basically what they call an overbought, oversold type indicator. And there are different settings for this, but typically, people say if it's overbought, it's at 70 or higher. If it's oversold, it's at 30 or lower. Now, one thing I would caution on, whenever you hear those comments about any indicator in the market, use it as a guideline. I've seen it stay overbought for a long time, and I've seen it stay oversold for a long time. Another key thing, which I think is very powerful, is a lot of times people will look for divergence in the trend lines. And I'll show you we'll see if we can find an example of that here. I'm just going to scroll back here a little bit. Let's go to a longer time frame. Again, go to interval. I'm going to go to a 2 hour and just see if we see anything that pops out at us. Sometimes it becomes very apparent. Other times, not so much. Here's one, and this isn't a great example, but here's one where we sort of had just a sideways, choppy market, but the RSI was continuing to fall. So if we had a straight trend line, and basically the premise is if the market is rising and the RSI is falling, that could be a signal that the trend is about to change. It's not really a trend indicator, but that's a key signal. Here we have kind of a little bit of a divergence just on these two because we saw this high point hit here, which lines up with this, and then this high point here, which is lower than that one, but on the RSI, it's higher. Maybe, and typically we like to see 3 points, but maybe that's something else. That's something else you can explore with the RSI. Again, it's a lifetime of study with these indicators. It doesn't require a lifetime to be an effective trader, but one thing I love about the markets is that you can always be learning. There are a whole list of indicators here. And if I go back here, you can spend a long time. The one thing I'll say in technical analysis, let's keep it a bit simple. Oftentimes we call, and you've probably heard it, analysis paralysis. I remember when I started trading and I was learning all these indicators, and the next thing I knew, I had about 14 different indicators on my screen. I couldn't get a signal to save my life because they never all agree. I was just paralyzed to do anything. But let's go in here and take a look at maybe placing a trade. I'm going to go back into a little tighter time frame here. So again, interval, 15-minute. Now, again, this is just basic technical analysis, and so this is not an indication to buy or sell. But if I'm looking at this blue line as a level of resistance, right, I might think the market is going to continue to drop from there, but I might look for an opportunity to sell, right? I think it's below. So I might choose, and this is how I can place a trade directly from the chart. I think the market's going to stay below that line. We've got about 7 hours till expiration. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to set, I've got my default limit. I'm going to place an order to sell that contract. Now in this case, and I'm just going to bring that order ticket up again just to walk through it. So I've got 10 contracts. I'm going to move it down to 1 as the example. So right in this case, and we're just going to cover basics of binary option, I'm putting up almost $80 in my max loss, $79.75, for a potential max profit of $20.25, because I believe the probabilities are in my favor, and that's the whole thing about a binary option, right? So I placed that trade. I moved it down to the 1 lot so that you could see the actual numbers on a 1 lot. But if I move it back to 10, obviously they simply multiply by 10. Instead of risking $79.75, I'm now risking $797.50, right? And so this is how I would use the trend line that I drew earlier as potential support and resistance. Now, I'd probably want to look maybe at another indicator. I could use the RSI, see if that's telling me anything. And again, be patient. That's another key. Just because, and I hear it all the time, well, why did you place that trade? Well, I'm a trader. I need to trade. Cash is a position. That's something to keep in mind. The markets will be here. You do not have to trade every second of every day, right? Be patient. I'm going to go back to the indicators and see if we see anything here. So, we've got a few different channels that we could use on this one. I'm going to actually go with the Bollinger Bands and just see if we see anything. And it looks like there we were kind of up by the top of that channel. It actually peaked out a little bit. We had RSI not really over 70. And again, this is why this is just an example. This is probably a trade in real life. I would either looked at and said, oh, you know what, I may have missed it, or it's just not the right time to take that trade. I'll wait for further confirmation. If it had gone up towards that trend line and I got really good confirmation from both my Bollinger Bands and my RSI, then maybe I'm placing that trade. Right? So I'm going to go back out here to our trade, and I'm just going to slide that down here. Right? So you can see right here on this particular pennant, right here on this strike price, I have my order. It says 10 above 1.1060, right? Now, right now, the market hasn't moved very much. So once the market moves, I may see my profit and loss there. Now, though, if I wanted to set a limit order, I'm going to set a limit order. Now, we're already pretty low, but I'm going to say if this hits a value of $10, that's where I want my limit order to go. So now you see I have 2 working orders. That's why. Excuse me, I didn't get filled on my first one. So I'm going to go back to my 10 shorts, something very important to check. I'm going to delete the remainder. Go back in, click my sell. This time, though, I'm going to use my market order, right? This is an inadvertent but very important lesson. Always double check, and when it's grayed out, that means it's filled. Okay, now we've got the order where we're short, right? We're short at 1250, 10 above 1060, and we've got our limit order working, right? If I want to go in and see what I've got, another handy way to check, I'm just going to lower this. Oops, excuse me. I'm going to do this, and I see my working order. If I want to amend that, delete it, I can click close. If I want to expand my chart again, I simply click like that. By the way, if you're using multiple monitors, this box right here, I won't be able to illustrate it because I only have one monitor that I'm using right now. This box right here is will allow you to pop it out and move it to another monitor. Right now, if I have it in my chart, see, I can try to move it, but if I click this, then I can pop it out. Right, and so let me walk through that one more time. So I've got my order right here. I simply click on that flag, and it allows me to, I can basically close out, right? Because I had sold, it opens up the ticket on the buy side, right? So if I'm sitting there watching it, I'm up $2.50 right now. Left click, and if I wanted to close it out again, I can change this to a market order. This would be particularly important, I'll just say, as you see, this just turned red over here. If I'm selling at a low level or buying at a high level and the market really starts to move against me, I may want to close out that trade. And we covered a lot of that in the first couple modules. But here, see, we're already down 1250 now. I might just want to close that out on a market order and get out of that position. So let's walk through one more trade here, just to go through that again. I'm going to move my chart here. And again, this is not really using analysis as I would in placing a real trade, but let's just say we had a level of support right down here. Or we thought it was going to bounce. Maybe this is our support area. We're going to take a look at buying this contract. We think the market's going to go up at least for the remainder of the day. I can go to my market order. Again, I can see my maximum loss and my maximum profit. Place my order, click close. It's filled, right? Again, I traded 10 contracts, right? You'll notice that it's always negative right away because when you're looking at floating profit and loss, just so you're aware if you're not, when you're looking at floating profit and loss, that's where you could get out right now, or that's basically where the bid or offer is. So for example, if I left click on this order ticket and I say, okay, I bought this one, but now I can get out at basically $54, right? I don't get out right away where I bought it because there's that bid offer spread. That's why you see the automatic negative there. So if I wanted to get out of this one, right, I bought, so I could do the sell. If I want to get out right away, I'm going to use my market with protection order and click close. And that's how you place a trade or close a position from the charts. I hope this has been helpful. I hope there have been at least a few tidbits on the technical analysis side that you found useful. Kind of an overview on where to find everything within the charts. I definitely encourage you to, tour around them. There are a lot of things that we just couldn't cover in the short time frame that we had today. So go ahead and take a peek around. Try out the indicators, study the indicators, the drawing tools, the technical analysis aspects. And again, I want to thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, feedback, we've got 24-hour client support basically from Sunday afternoon to Friday afternoon. So all the hours that the markets are open, we've got you covered. Give us a call or shoot us an email. You can reach your account specialist at 312-884-0162 for questions and feedback on the webinar. If there's other material that you want to see that we don't have covered that you'd be interested in learning, let us know. We always love to hear from you. We really want you to shape the trading experience that you get here at Nadex. Email us at asknadex@nadex.com. Follow us on Twitter at Nadex or on tweet using the hashtag AskNadex. Thank you again for joining me.